Hi everyone, it's Amie. Welcome back to my channel. I'm going to be taking on the end of year book tag, which is inspired by Jackie from the Reading Wordsmith. I've seen that she's just posted her video. I think it's a really cool way to reflect. I feel like we're officially in the middle of December, and I feel like it's very much now people looking back and reflecting and highlighting their bookish year. So I thought I would do the same. So if you are interested in that, please stay tuned. Okay, so the first prompt is, are there any books you started this year and you need to finish? I've recently started Addie LaRue, so that's really interesting and something that I need to finish reading because I'm actually really enjoying it all. It's a bit slow, and I am doing the ebook and the audiobook simultaneously, but I'm also really struggling with focus because I can tell it's well written, but I feel like there's a lot going on in my head that is almost like prohibiting my ability to actually just sit down and enjoy it. But Addie LaRue is something that I've wanted to read for a long time, and as I discussed in my previous video, I do have Kindle Unlimited, and it just so happens that there are a lot of V. Schwab's books on there as well. So I would love to finish The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue because it's a book that I've wanted to read for a long time, and now that I'm into it, I'm actually really enjoying it. I'm at a point where I feel like I'm coming out of a fog because I had a really terrible November reading month. And as I previously discussed, I was hoping that this month I could turn things around. But this is the 17th of December that I'm recording this, and I haven't made that much progress. So I'm trying to kind of live with the disappointment of that. Or maybe not live with, come to terms with. And it's a little bit difficult, but I have some time off next week, so we'll see. Okay, and the next prompt is, do you have an autumnal book to transition into the end of the year? That is a really good question. I would like to read You know, the book that inspired the TV show. I actually watched the first 2 seasons of You, but after a while I actually did lose interest. And I have come to realize that shows like You don't sit right with me. There's just something about watching shows about crime that I hate now. Like, I know people always talk about how like women love true crime or shows that like depict crime, but I have come to a point in which I can't watch crime anymore, which I think is so strange because when I was growing up, my grandma loved crime and I would watch the shows with her and I was fine. Back in 2020, it was in the pandemic and I was spending a lot of time by myself because I was living with my aunt, but then she was working as normal because she was an essential worker. So she would go out and then I would be in her house by myself sometimes. There were two crime shows in particular, and I don't know why I watched them back to back. Maybe people are not interested in what they were, but they were like two of the most famous crimes that happened in the UK, I think well before even I was born. And so I watched the two documentaries back to back, which was, in hindsight, one of the biggest mistakes I have ever made in my entire life because they were crimes against children, and I don't think I had ever watched a crime show that centered children as victims. It was the first time. And when I tell you that my body shut down, I'm not even joking. Even now, I can feel myself getting overwhelmed because I have been so adversely affected by watching those. Like, what made me think I could watch them both back to back? When I tell you, like, my body shut down, the best way I can describe it is kind of like a blackout. I was so taken aback because you hear about crime every day, and not to say that crime against like adults is normal or like should be more socially accepted, that's not what I'm saying, but I think it was the first time I realized that people can be capable of harming children to that extent. And I don't know, my body just could not take it. It just couldn't. I remember like my mom calling me like the day after, and she was like, oh, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine, because I did come out of it eventually. And she was like, oh, I've been calling you. And I was like, you have? I don't know what happened. I can't even account for what happened or what. I don't know if it was shock, but all I know is that my body shut down, and for a good few hours I did not know what to do with myself. And ever since then, I haven't been able to watch a crime show. I haven't been able to watch, whether it's a show that is talking about crimes that have happened to actual people, or a show that is depicting crime against people, like murder shows and stuff. I just can't. And also, I'm not typically the kind of person that dreams and has nightmares, but I've noticed that every time I've watched something, I do. Like, I watched Mindhunters, which is actually a really good show, but then I was just like, oh my god, like I'm speechless basically. I tried to watch You and it just wasn't connecting. What else did I try to watch? What are those ones? The ones that have been popping up on Netflix. The Monster series. Could not get into those at all. I only watched like the first couple of episodes and could never connect. Because I kind of want to be discussing these shows, but I just know that they're not for me. My mental state cannot, I don't think I've ever fully recovered. And these are not even crimes that happen to me. So I cannot even imagine what the families of these victims go through on a day-to-day basis, trying to make it through this life every day, knowing that that happened to somebody that they knew, somebody that they loved. And it's just me who's like a stranger who hasn't been closely affected by any of it, but still my body was able to have that kind of reaction. While I would love to watch You, I just don't think I'm at a point in which I can. So I think maybe reading the book might be more helpful. And I've been intrigued because also the book is on Kindle Unlimited. So I would like to see what the book is all about, but I don't know whether I'll be successful. I'll let you know if I'm able to. Another thing that I want to read is The Pumpkin Spice Cafe, which I've had very mixed reviews about, mostly on the negative. I haven't heard very good things about it. It's something that I'm curious to read because I want to see if it's as bad as people say it is. I want to see if there's any redeeming qualities about it. Sometimes I am swayed by the opinions I see, specifically if the person who's talking about it, we have similar reading tastes. I just kind of want to see if it's as bad as people say it is, or for the people who did enjoy it, I want to see if I can enjoy it for the same reasons. Whenever I think of pumpkin, I think of autumn, so I automatically grade it as an autumnal book, even though it might not be. Another thing that I want to read is Legends and Lattes. That could actually have been slotted in with the first prompt as well, because I have started it, but started it in the sense that I only read a couple of pages. So I don't even think I gave myself enough of a chance to actually see if I would enjoy it and actually get properly invested into the story. But it is a book that is highly rated and fairly popular, so I think that I'm curious to see if I'll feel the same way, much like Pumpkin Spice Cafe. Only difference being that Legends and Lattes, for the most part, the reviews I've seen of it are quite positive. It will definitely be interesting to see if I can get those done before the end of the year. The next prompt is there a new release you're still waiting for? Not the end of this year, thankfully, because I feel like that would add to my pressure that I'm already feeling. But Kat Sebastian has a new book coming out next year. It's called Starshipped. I'm going to read the description. So it says, Kat Sebastian's long-awaited foray into contemporary romance, a witty, emotional, and deliciously slow-burn enemies to lovers between two co-stars on a popular sci-fi television series. I am so excited because Kat Sebastian is a very well-known male historical romance writer. And this is her first time writing contemporary, and I am so excited because first of all, I'm always excited whenever Kat Sebastian writes anything, but I'm particularly excited to see that she's delving into waters that she hasn't previously done. It sounds so much fun, and they're like co-stars, they can't stand each other, so she's doing a bit of enemies to lovers, which I'm not always a fan of, admittedly. But I think that it's Kat Sebastian, and I feel like if there's any author that could make me like things I don't typically like, it's probably going to be her. Kat Sebastian's humor typically works for me so much, so I'm very excited to see the shenanigans that Simon and Charlie get up to. Also, I seem to be very lucky in terms of book characters called Charlie, because if I think about Book Lovers by Emily Henry, and I think about, there's another book, the one that had Dev and Charlie, what's it called? The Charm Offensive, there we go. Between Book Lovers by Emily Henry and The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrane, I've had very good experiences with Charlies in books. So I'm hoping that this will be yet another Charlie that I happen to love. That's coming out in March, and I can't think of a better way to go into spring than an anticipated release by an author that I love. Next question is, what are 3 books you want to read before the end of the year? I'm just so happy whenever I have the answer to something. A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by Sangu Mandana. I'm very much looking forward to reading. Again, it's on Kindle Limited, just in case you didn't know. I've read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana, and I absolutely just adored that book. So when I saw that not only had she written another one, but it was a book that was also on Kindle Limited, I was like, I have to read this as soon as I can, because I have this worrying thought that it's going to be taken away. I don't know why, to be honest. It's kind of irrational because I haven't actually seen a book be taken away from Kindle Limited, only added. It said it's an enchanting novel about a witch who has a second chance to get her magical powers and her life back on track, from the national best-selling author of The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. Sarah Swan was once one of the most powerful witches in Britain. Then she resurrected her great aunt Jasmine from the very recently dead, lost most of her magic, befriended a semi-villainous talking fox, and was exiled from her magical guild. Now she, slightly reluctantly and just a bit grumpily, helps Aunt Jasmine run an inn in Lancashire, where she deals with her quirky guest shenanigans, tries to keep the talking fox in check, and longs for the magical future she lost. It sounds so cozy and so fun and so funny as well. And I think from my previous experience of Sangomandan, I think she has a way of balancing depth and humor and things that feel very cozy and very intimate. She has this very intimate way of writing that I really loved in the previous book, and I hope it's the same here. It's a very beautiful book cover. The next book that I would really love to read is The After Party by A.C. Arthur. And it says 3 women form an unbreakable bond in a sexy, suspenseful, and adventurous novel about empowerment and sisterhood through thick and thin. Venus McGee, Drea Carter, and Jackie Benson are co-workers with a lot in common. They're smart, independent, driven, and deserving of recognition, certainly more than they've been handed by a demoralizing boss. He's the topic of conversation at their impromptu get-together after the company holiday party, where the threesome fantasizes about life without him. There has to be an alternative to taking a deep breath and sucking it up. There is. It's just not the one that they expected. And I am so excited. First of all, I love the cover, but also I've been wanting to read more like women's stories, more books focused on just women, I suppose, and their journeys throughout the world that have not so much romance, if that makes any sense, because I feel like I've read a lot of romances and things, especially when I first started out. I used to read exclusively male-female romance, but I think if this book is what I think it's going to be, then it's mostly going to focus on them as individuals and together, as opposed to them partnered with other people. I think also it would be really nice to read a story about 3 black friends as well, especially in the workplace, because I feel like that's kind of where my life is at the minute. And so I think sometimes it's quite nice to read books that you can relate to on a personal level. It does seem like a cool mystery. I don't know if actually, yeah, it's a mystery actually, mystery thriller. Hopefully I get to read it before the end of this year. If I could read the 3 books I'm about to mention now, between now and the 31st of December, I'd be really happy. And then the last book I want to read is When the Tides Held the Moon, by Vanessa Vida Kelly. I have to admit, I do not know anything about this book. I just saw the cover and I thought it was absolutely beautiful. And yes, I am not immune from being taken by a cover and wanting to read a book solely because the cover caught my eye and I thought it was gorgeous, and this is just one of them. The description says, in Coney Island, true love rises to the surface with lush illustrations and buoyant prose. Vanessa Vida Kelly forges an unforgettable New York fairy tale. It says, Benny Caldera knows an orphan Boricua blacksmith in 1910s New York can't call himself an artist, but the ironwork tank he creates for famed Coney Island playground Luna Park astounds the eccentric sideshow proprietor who commissioned it. He invites Benny to join the show's eclectic cast and share in their shocking secret. The tank will cage their newest exhibit, a live merman stolen from the salty banks of the East River, which sounds amazing. It sounds like a whole adventure. Boricua means somebody from Puerto Rico, if I'm not mistaken, because I remember when I used to watch The Real in my younger years, Adrienne would always refer to herself as a Boricua. It sounds really, really fun. It sounds a bit like The Greatest Showman in a book. Love the fact that there's a sort of like mystery, intrigue, fantasy as well, because I've also said that I wanted to read a lot more fantasy this year, so I'm excited about what this book could bring. And it looks really highly rated on Goodreads. It's a 4.19, which is amazing. So yeah, I'm very, very much looking forward to reading these 3 books before the end of the year. Next prompt is, what trends have you noticed in your reading this year? Heavy on the romance. Heavy. I think my reading has primarily consisted of male romance, and it has also primarily consisted of reading series and reading things from the same author. So if I encounter an author and I've liked something that I've read, I've just been trying to read everything that they've ever written. So very heavy on the romance, which I think is what is in part fueling my romance fatigue at the moment. I think a better strategy would have been to space it out and involve other genres, or maybe take breaks in between, which I didn't. And I feel like the constant reading has kind of contributed to why it's very difficult for me to read right now, in part. It's not the entire reason. I have other theories as to why I've struggled. But yeah, it's been heavy on the romance, but I have discovered some amazing reads. I've discovered some amazing authors, and I definitely don't regret it. Rather than a regret, I kind of take it as a lesson learned for next year, in terms of being a bit more strategic about what I'm reading, rather than just being so rigid about reading from the exact same authors, because then I feel like authors most of the time have patterns, and it's harder to miss when you've read consecutive books by the same author. And I think it contributes to fatigue in the event that they do have a rather strong pattern about the way that they write. Another thing that I've noticed about my reading this year has been repetition. I have very much enjoyed going back to stories that I have loved. Like, I have very much enjoyed going back to stories that I've loved. So stories by Cat Sebastian or J.J. Mulder or just other authors. Any book that has elicited just really positive feelings in me, I found myself going back to read, especially at times when I haven't connected to a new book or a new author. I always go back to read the books that have made me happiest over the course of my reading journey. So lots of repeat, which I have sadly not logged. And it's something that I do in quite a haphazard way, in the sense that I'll go back, I'll read a certain chapter or I'll read a certain book. Because I've read the book before and I know the things that I've loved in those books, then I don't actually feel the need to actually start from beginning, unless with certain books. So I'll go back to a part of the book that I loved, or a chapter, or an experience. But yeah, lots and lots and lots of rereading books that I've already read, lots of repetition, lots of staying in my comfort zone, which is something that I'm obviously trying to change. I think when I talk about my strategy for next year, it will be good to talk about the things that I've learned about this year and how I'm planning to either repeat the things that I felt worked, and also sort of incorporate new things in order to make it a better year, make it so that I can get more from reading that I already do, if that makes any sense. The next prompt is, how do you feel about your reading goals? Anything you want to change, adjust, or abandon? Guys, I already talked about this in the previous video, but I don't feel great about my reading goals. I think I started off this year wanting to read 75 books. Obviously that hasn't happened. And then I went back and adjusted it to read, I think, 53. So one higher than I read last year. And that still hasn't happened. And mind you, we are in the middle of December. So I don't feel great about it. I'm going to be honest. I think I'm just going to get vulnerable for a few minutes, in the sense that in many ways, I do see it as a personal failure, which I don't love. I'm not going to lie to you. I thought about being really positive and upbeat about it, and I just thought that's just going to be a farce. And it sounds like a farce to my ears. It doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound true. It just sounds like BS. I'm very disappointed that I haven't read as much and as widely as I think I should have, as much as I wanted to. And I'm not going to lie, I don't feel great about it. At this time, I feel very depleted. Energy-wise, motivation-wise. I can't even watch shows very much, which is a shame. I'm feeling very depleted. Also, this is the first Christmas I've had in a while where I wasn't working in either hospitality or retail or both. This is the first time I've actually had a 9 to 5, which means that for the most part, next week I will be having a pretty quiet week. And it feels strange because it feels like my body is almost preparing for something that's not happening, because I don't have to work over Christmas for the first time in about 5 years, I believe. So I don't know, it feels like my body's gearing to do something that I know is not happening. And I don't know what helps. If you have any sort of like remedies that can help, like just try to transition away from that, because this time last year I was preparing to tackle, if you know anything about retail and hospitality in Christmas, it is a mad time. It's not even like it's ever really calm, but Christmas is like a different beast. And this is the first year that that is not happening for me, but somehow it hasn't registered in my body that this is not happening. So it's almost like my body's programmed to take a break before all hell breaks loose next week, but it's not happening because that's not what's going to happen. So if you have any tips about ways in which I can transition my body away from how I've previously programmed it, I would really appreciate it. I hope I can get to a space where I just kind of accept that reading is not a race, reading is a hobby. Reading should trigger joy. Reading should be something I treat like a goal or like a conquest. I hope that I get to a point where I can just finish reading on a good note, close the year out on a good note, and just appreciate where I am and what I've done. And then the last prompt says, have you already started making reading plans for the next year? And I have to say that I have, actually. The first thing that I really want to talk about is I will be joining Janani from This Story Ain't Over's anti-brain rot challenge next year. She's launching an anti-brain rot challenge because she's been doing a lot of discussion videos about brain rot and critical thinking and just a lot of really interesting topics that I've loved over the past few months. And she's launched a challenge to make sure that we can keep on top of brain rotting that unfortunately so many of us are vulnerable to, in part or sometimes fully, because of social media and the way that things work and algorithms. And I think I was really inspired by her video about it, and I will tag it below. But that's a plan I'm making. I'm also, like I've previously talked about, I really want to delve into genres that are not romance and fantasy, and I want to read a lot of non-fiction as well. I really want to read books about self-help because that's not really a genre that I've previously enjoyed. I much prefer to listen to self-help, but I also feel like, you know, people talk every day about books that have changed their lives that are not fiction, and I really want to delve and see if I can get like into that world. If you have any ideas about like great starter self-help books, I would be very grateful. It could cover any topic that you think might be useful to me, so it could be anything like financial advice, general life advice. Just send them my way, a good starter. So between exploring other genres and also talking about anti-brain rot and critical thinking and reading books that help with those challenges, those are really my plans. And I wanted to talk quickly about brain rot and critical thinking because at first when I saw it, I was like, I don't think I have those issues. But then I realized that these are things that can really sneak up on you. Like, you can live your life not knowing the adverse effects that social media is having on your brain, and sometimes there are things that we don't realize until it's too late, and they've already caused so much damage that it takes so much time to reverse the effects of what it's done. Whereas I feel like now joining this challenge feels very much preemptive to me, if that makes any sense. And I'd encourage you guys as well, if it's something that you've been thinking about, or maybe something that you haven't thought about, that you just didn't really think applied to you, I definitely want to implore you to maybe think about it and join as well, because as much as people talk about it in terms of something that has to be solved when it becomes an actual problem, I think it could be great to preemptively get on top of these topics before they have really bad effects. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, that is the end of the challenge. I would like to say a big thank you to Jackie from the Reading Wordsmith. All of the tags I've ever done have been because of her, and I just love the fact that she found my channel. She reached out to me, I followed her. It's such a joy to follow her on YouTube, and I love a tag. Okay, so if you have a channel and you create tags and you want people to join in, please tag me. I'd be happy to do it. I realize that I love tags, I love quizzes, I love questions, I love prompts, any of that stuff. Those kind of things really appeal to me, I've realized. I think on top of answering questions, which I love to do regardless, I think that it also makes you think about your reading experiences and makes you think about questions that you may otherwise never have asked yourself because it just didn't occur to you to do so. So I'm very thankful. I'm very thankful for all of you for watching. Let me know how your reading year is going so far. Let me know if you have any suggestions for me, what you'd like to see going forward. Thank you so much, and I'll see you when I see you. Bye.